Greetings everyone. I am Uday Sharma from the Tripoli Department of Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. Today I am going to discuss about the topic climate effects on US infrastructure. Climate change refers to long-term changes in temperature, precipitation, and weather patterns caused by human activity. These changes have significant impacts on infrastructure, including rail, roads, and coastal development, which three consistently makes the total infrastructure of any country. The United States, in particular, faces significant challenges in adapting its rail, road, and coastal development to the changing climate. Let us see the economics of adaptation for these three types of infrastructure, highlighting the costs, benefits of different strategies and technologies. Railways are, let us see what is the effect of climate on the US rail infrastructure. Railways are vulnerable to climate change, impacts such as flooding, which can cover the tracks and makes the tracks unable to move or transport, same as the landslides, and extreme heat, which stretches out the track and makes the imbalance in the train while moving, which can damage the tracks, bridges, and other infrastructure. Examples of damage caused by climate change, including washouts, track bulking, and landslides. As discussed, washouts is when a track is covered full of the flooded water, or and track bulking is when the tracks are bulked out during the heat. Upgrading rail infrastructure to adapt the changing climate conditions can be costly, but it is necessary to avoid economic losses for disruptions in rail transport. Examples of adaptation measures for rail infrastructure include improving drainage systems. Improved drainage systems can help in reducing this water stagnation, water in during these rail tracks, and using heat resistant materials can help this track not to bulk out during the heats. Strengthening of bridges is also one of the key role in the US rail infrastructure. The Federal Railroad Administration has established a program to help railroads identify and address vulnerabilities to climate change. Economics of adaptation for US rail infrastructure. The cost of rail infrastructure to climate change impact is less than the cost of inaction, and disruptions to rail transport can have significant economic implications. However, the upfront cost of adaptation may be the barrier to action for companies and communities with limited financial resources. It is important for policymakers to consider the economics of adaptation when making infrastructure investment decisions, as well as potential funding sources such as federal grants and private partnerships. Climate effect on US road infrastructure. Roads are vulnerable to climate too, such as flooding, landslides, and extreme heat are the main reasons, or they can be categorized as the three main reasons which damage most of the infrastructures. Increasing maintenance costs due to the damaged roads and bridges, the maintenance cost increases, which lead to disruptions in transportation. Examples of damage caused by climate change include road washouts, bridge failures, pavement bulking, which can lead to safety hazards and increased travel times. Upgrading road infrastructure to adapt to changing climatic conditions can be costly, but necessary. It is also necessary to avoid losses from disruptions to road transport. Simple. These are the three main improving the drainage systems, strengthening bridges, and using heat resistant materials. There are few heat resistant materials like instead of the regular tar or anything used to make the road, there are new technologies like plastic based roads, which stick together, which do not pave out or which do not chip out during the conditions or rain conditions, which stay intact and can last longer compared to the regular roads. Strengthening of, again, the drainage systems play a key important role in the adaptation to the climate effects on infrastructure, any infrastructure, as water can accumulate in airy areas during the road or the railroads, etc., for taken and can stop or cause blockage in transportation. The Federal Highway Administration has established a program to help states and local governments identify the address vulnerabilities to climate change. The cost of adapting road infrastructure to climate change impact is less than the cost of inaction and disruptions to the transport and can have significant economic implementations. However, the upfront cost, as discussed earlier, can be a barrier to action for companies and communities with limited financial resources. As discussed earlier, the federal grants and private partnerships should be considered before, and the policymakers should consider the adaptation cost before making these kinds of payment to the infrastructure. As we can see, there is a different no adaptation. Where is the no adaptation, and there is a change in costs. Then there is reactive adaptation and there is proactive adaptation. There are three different. When there are two different adaptations and there is a no adaptation. Climate change effects on U.S. coastal development. Coastal development is particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate, including sea level rise, storm surges, and coastal erosion. Examples of damage caused by change, including flooding, coastal erosion, and increased hurricane intensity, which can damage infrastructure such as buildings, roads, and other facilities. Adaptation measures such as building adaptation measures such as building sea walls, elevation buildings, and relocation critical infrastructure to higher ground can help reduce the impact of climate change on coastal development. But these measures can also be costly. The meaning of sea walls is arranging a boundary type of walls between the sea and the mainland, elevating buildings and elevating above the ground level or from a safer level from the flooding. In addition to the infrastructure damage, climatic change impacts on coastal development can lead to the loss of property values and affect tourism, fishing, and other industries that rely on coastal resources, which affect the basic livelihood of the people living there, as people may be living out of fishing or based on the tourism, etc. Economics of adaptation of US coastal development. The cost of adapting coastal development to climate change impacts its high but necessary, as inaction can be significant economic losses. The cost of building seawalls, elevating buildings, and relocating infrastructure from to higher ground, among other measures. As we have discussed earlier, funding sources for adaptation can include federal grants, private partnerships, and insurance programs. Investing in coastal adaptation measures can have a long-term economic benefits, such as protecting property values, reducing risk in human safety, and preserving coastal ecosystems. Potential solutions for climate adaptation, encouraging that is, public/private partnerships for infrastructure investment and adaptation. Developing and implementing climate resistant design standards for infrastructure products, enhancing public awareness and education on the impact of climate change on infrastructure, encouraging innovation and research into new technologies and approaches for climate adaptation, supporting international efforts to migrate greenhouse gases emissions and slow the pace of climate change. Climate effect on US. Let us conclude by seeing what is the climate effect, total climate effect on US infrastructure. Climate change has a significant impacts on infrastructure, including railroads and coastal development, as discussed. Adapting to, as this is the main key. That is, adapting to infrastructure can be very costly, but it is necessary to avoid economic loss and protect public safety. Funding sources should be discussed earlier, and the main key is encouraging innovation and educating people. International collaboration can help address the challenges of climate adaptation for infrastructure. Thank you. This is Sudha Sharma signing off.